By the time the gavel fell and the courtroom air turned thin as a Starbucks straw, she was trembling so hard the tiny gold charms on her bracelet clinked like ice in a plastic cup. They all heard it, the jury that didn't exist in family court but somehow did today because the judge had indulged my special proceeding request. The bailiff who'd been a linebacker at our high school and now looked at me like we were back under the Friday night lights. The reporters who weren't reporters at all, but PTA moms with iPhones, the ones who had been whispering about my so-called revenge tour since my first court date. My cheating wife had been mocking me all morning, full volume, TikTok ready, chin tilted, that smile like citrus in a paper cut. And now her lips wouldn't cooperate with her sentences or the narrative she'd curated on Instagram. The judge read the verdict in plain American English, and the world became sharper, like when your optometrist clicks the better lens and the letters pop into focus, and you realize you've been misreading your own life for years. You want me to start at the beginning, of course, but the beginning is a scam. Every story anyone tells about betrayal has already been edited to make someone look like a hero and someone else like a monster, and everyone's always shocked to learn they are both. So let's start at the end and reverse engineer the truth the way a mechanic reverse engineers a squeak in a 15-year-old F-150. At the end, the judge says my name, Miles Whitaker. Do you swear? Do you affirm? And I nod because it feels more American than swearing. She says the post-nup stands, the evidence stands, the dissipation of community funds is proven, custody is what it is, child support is what it should have been, and the house stays where I put it a year ago, in a trust for the kids that requires the trustee not to move out of the school district that my kids actually love because the mascot is a questionably angry badger and the band still plays Tom Petty at halftime. The judge's voice is not righteous or theatrical. She sounds like a woman who's been in the trenches of people's private wars for 20 years and finally found a hill she can plant a flag on. She looks at my wife, ex-wife now, if the clerk stamps fast enough, and says, "Ma'am, your mockery today did not help your case." It is not about revenge, I keep telling myself. It's about neutralizing chaos. But I'd be lying if I said the word revenge didn't bloom like fireworks somewhere in my chest as the last sentence landed. And as to the allegation of coercive control against Mr. Whitaker, the court finds the submitted messages were fabricated. The fabricated messages were the core of her performance art. She'd arrived with a confidence that had the whole gallery leaning forward. She'd walked past me like I was a coat rack. She'd taken the stand, and with a voice cotton soft and steady, told the story of a man who never existed. "He tracked me," she said. "He isolated me from my family." She held up screenshots. She cried on cue. Somewhere in the second row, a woman in a cropped denim jacket squeezed her own boyfriend's hand, the theater of it all hitting them like an earthquake drill. My cheating wife. Let's keep the keyword honest, because if this were a thumbnail below some video with 12 million views, the words would be in bold white text over a freeze frame of my deadpan face and her smile, had been planning this for months. The mockery was not spontaneous. It was a carefully rehearsed brand voice. Only in reverse, you see different. You see me watching the judge turn slightly toward my attorney, the attorney I could barely afford, but whose retainer I paid by liquidating a motorcycle project I'd pretended I would finish someday, and give him that nod professionals give each other when the rules of the game are clear. You see the motion to admit the machine vision report. You see the bailiff's eyebrow go up. You see the public's curiosity perk. You see my attorney say, in a voice that somehow threads the needle between Ivy League and County Fair, that we would like to show the court how these screenshots of texts supposedly sent by me were generated using a readily available template app and embellished with incorrect punctuation spacing that my wife's lover, an amateur growth hacker who runs a fake influencer farm out of a WeWork, used across multiple sock puppet accounts. You see the judge read the report, slow but not confused, and say, "Proceed." At the end, even the phrasing of betrayal changed. Betrayal wasn't a single event. It was a subscription model, 1,000 micro-cheatings, each auto-renewed. Lies told in the vocabulary of self-care. I need space floated into, I need a password to your iCloud because transparency is love. The mockery in court was just the live studio audience version of what had been happening on our couch for years. The infidelity had flashy highlights, hotel receipts, the spiky young man with his CrossFit calves, and boutique cologne. But the deeper sin was the erosion of reality. An entire architecture of toxic love had been drawn around me like a temporary tattoo that somehow became permanent. The more I scrubbed, the more it burned. So yes, when the verdict landed and her knees forgot how to function and the charms on her bracelet rattled, it was not triumph I felt so much as oxygen, a return to plain air, unperfumed, free. Everyone wants a neat ending tied up like a Target bag. That's not how this works. But this is America, and in America we make ceremonial endings because we're terrified of uncertainty. We bake it into our dances, the alma mater, the wave at the ballpark, the gavel, the anthem, the touchdown song. So let me give you a tidy closing for this first act. The judge says her piece, we file out past the seal on the wall, and I step into a hallway that smells like hand sanitizer and courthouse coffee. My phone buzzes with 3 texts. One from my mother, "Call me when it's over, honey." One from my Little League assistant coach, "Proud of you, man." And one from an unknown number that says simply, "We should talk." I don't know yet that the unknown number belongs to someone who will introduce me to the strangest conspiracy I've ever heard, the one that will make the cheating wife saga look like a prequel. But I know this much. The end is just the beginning, running backward with the lights on. Rewind. Back past the courtroom's fluorescent hum and the PTA paparazzi, past the deposition transcripts and the legal pads fat with receipts, back to the Saturday my fridge snitched. In a better marriage, your appliances are neutral. In ours, the Samsung Family Hub became a witness for the prosecution. Don't laugh. You would too if your refrigerator sent you a push notification while you were at your daughter's soccer game that said, "Unusual door activity detected, front door opened 12 times in 13 minutes. And you had the Ring camera feed to match it, eerie and efficient, a parade of deliveries that did not involve packages. I watched on my phone as the neighborhood's favorite wellness coach, cap backwards, water bottle the size of a toddler, jogged into my kitchen like it was a pop-up gym. He did this while I was negotiating whose turn it was to bring orange slices next week. This is America. We schedule our breakdowns between errands. I did not say a word to anyone on the sidelines. I bought popsicles for the team after the game, and when my daughter ran to me with her cheeks bright and her ponytail wild, I told her she played like a comet. This is where you expect the serious adult conversation, the kind that happens on prestige TV where the camera lingers on the empty hallway before the door closes. But we were not prestige TV, we were local access, public television at 10 p.m. after the pledge drive. When I confronted Sloan, my wife's name is Sloan like it's a permanent weekend, she went with parody so efficiently that I almost respected the craft. "Are you surveilling me now?" she asked, as if she weren't the one who had installed the fridge app when she got into a competition with the neighbors about smart kitchen optimization. "Miles, this is coercive." She said the word slowly, savoring it like a sommelier describing oak. In her revised narrative, I was already the villain. "We're a family," I said, and heard how plaintive and 1987 that sounded, like I was reading from a civics textbook. The word family had been losing altitude for months. It was a brand pillar, a word you stick on a sign in a rental house to absolve yourself of the distance creeping between the couch cushions. You want the first hint of the conspiracy? It wasn't the wellness coach, it was the binder. In the way that hoarders keep catalogs of obsolete coupon books, Sloane kept binders, slipcovers, dividers, tabs, the whole Office Depot orchestra. I was looking for the title to the Camry when I found the wrong binder. Inside, an actual business plan for monetizing betrayal. Narrativize the breakup, read one heading, in bullet points detailed enough to make a brand strategist blush. Soft launch separation, frame as personal growth, said another. There were weekly content calendars, mock-ups for Instagram stories. A staged shot list for We Tried. A list of allies who would comment with pre-approved phrases like, "You deserve joy, sis." A spreadsheet of exit costs, including moving deposits, retainer estimates for a lawyer with glossy hair, and a category called emotional branding with the line items like voice lessons, sound calm on camera. I thought I had misread. I read again. Sloane had turned our marriage into a product and put the launch date right there in blue ink just after Labor Day because audience is back from summer trips. The lover was only a subplot. The protagonist was viral content. I didn't explode. I incubated. I called my cousin in Phoenix who'd been through a divorce with a woman who weaponized therapy jargon like a fencing foil. He told me to find a lawyer before I found my voice. I met with an attorney on a Wednesday at a strip mall between a UPS store and a pet grooming salon. His suit looked like a different man's suit, but his mind was a scalpel. In this state, he said, adultery doesn't automatically change division of assets, but dissipation of marital funds does. If she's funneling money to Mr. Wellness or building a business on the back of a brand that disparages you with lies, we can make that count. Also, document everything, legally. He emphasized legally like he was swatting a hand away from a hot stove. Get the post-nup if you can, he said. You'd be surprised what people will sign if you present it as a mutual clarity agreement. I brought home 2 smoothies and a stack of papers with friendly fonts. We need boundaries, I told Sloane, using her favorite word like it was a secret handshake. Let's write them down. She signed every page like she was autographing merch. In the post-nup, we quietly agreed to keep the house in trust for the kids if either party engaged in cheating or infidelity, defined in precise, lawyerly English. We also agreed that any social media content about our breakup would be non-disparaging and fact-based, a phrase that would later become the judge's favorite new seasoning. The lover. His name was Zane, because of course it was. Because if you are writing parody about a cheating wife and her guy, you name him something like Zane or Trent or Austin, and you give him a startup you can't explain to your grandfather. Once parked his electric hatchback in my driveway and gave me a lecture about masculine energy. This happened the night I was reheating Costco rotisserie chicken and our daughter was doing fractions at the kitchen table. I get that you're afraid, he said, thumb hooked in his backpack strap, but fear is just love with bad PR. I blinked. I asked him if he was lost. He smiled like a TED Talk. He introduced himself as support and put a compostable business card on my counter. Crisis always happens on nights you didn't plan dinner. I explained to him, with the precision of a man who grew up in a house with rules on an index card by the phone, that he had 30 seconds to vacate my property, and that, going forward, his presence around my child would be discussed with my attorney. He said, "That sounds combative." I said, "It's English." The binder turned out to be Volume 1. On a shelf behind winter candles and a stash of string lights labeled Porch Vibe, I found a file labeled Court Strategy. Inside, a scripting document for testimony that included lines like, he would stand in the doorway. I didn't. He would check my location. I hadn't. And he threatened to take the kids from me. I had begged her not to take them from herself. There were screenshots. Only the dates didn't line up, and on 2 of the messages, the autocorrect was British. Who writes color with a U? unless you've never met me. I took the whole box to my lawyer. He didn't high-five me. He didn't grin. He said, "We're going to need expert help. Enter the unknown number from the end of Part 1. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I am relieved I did it. We set traps, not illegal ones, rhetorical ones, digital ones. Boxes a liar builds around herself when she thinks she's building a frontier." Sloane had a habit of narrating her day aloud like she was mic'd at a live event only she could hear. "I'm heading to Sculpt," she'd say, keys in hand, when she was going to meet Zane at his studio, which was a loft space where people sat on beanbags and talked about optimization. I started adding one-word replies to her announcements. "Cool," I'd say, and the phone in my pocket would vibrate, because the fridge had detected a door opening again, and the Ring doorbell had registered the approach of a man who used too much cologne for a Tuesday. We saved the footage. We never broke a lock or a password. We subpoenaed accounts we had a right to subpoena. We followed money that was ours. We built a scaffold of ordinary truth so tall you could see the whole neighborhood from the top. The PTA mom who DM'd me about concerns, the Lululemon receipt that could power a small city, the Venmo transfers labeled Reiki. Reverse still? Good. Because the most American thing I did was pretend nothing was wrong. I grilled. I mowed. I watched the NCAA tournament on mute while the dog barked at a squirrel. I went to church on Easter and sang like a baritone in a denim jacket, and then went home and scanned bank statements like a forensic accountant. I tucked my kid in and read a book about a rabbit and prayed words from a tradition I wasn't even sure I believed anymore. "Hellbun," I said to the ceiling, "help me tell the truth when the lies are this beautiful." Then I called the unknown number. The unknown number belonged to a woman who called herself a forgery cartographer, which sounded made up until she began mapping out the topography of fakes the way a meteorologist draws isobars. Her actual name was Dr. Naomi Fan. She did her PhD on computational linguistics and now ran a boutique lab that analyzed everything from ransom notes to influencer brand disputes. "What you have," she said the first time we met in a rented conference room that smelled like printer ink and ambition, "is a strawberry field of tells." She spread the screenshots across the table and then held her phone beside them to demonstrate. "Look," she said, "the kerning on the timestamp, the way this comma hugs the word like a clingy friend, and the British spelling sprinkled in like confetti. Your wife's lover, Zane, spent a gap year in London, right? He obviously loves to play cosmopolitan. He imported a texting template built for the UK market. Most people would never see it. But judges are people, and people love stories, and if you tell this right, all the tiny tells will behave like plot points." Naomi spoke in TV language because it turns out she'd been a consultant on a legal drama for 2 seasons and had seen enough courtroom performance to know where truth gets lost. "We're going to need to present this like a story," she said, "but with receipts that sing in 4-part harmony." She asked me for details that felt ridiculous. How I punctuate when I'm tired, whether I put spaces before ellipses. I do not, I refuse. How I format dates on the rare occasion I text a date to someone, month bash day, like a patriot. She recorded me talking about nothing. Costco, the DMV, coaching left field, my father's way of folding T-shirts with stupid precision. She fed it to a model that she explained in a way I pretended to understand. "We can't prove a negative," she said, "but we can show a consistent positive, your linguistic fingerprint, that the fabricated messages fail to match." She handed me a draft report. "This reads dry now," she said, "but under cross, it will be a river." Here's where conspiracy slides in wearing a blazer from Banana Republic. Naomi told me about The Pipeline, a quiet cottage industry of breakup consultants who coach clients, disproportionately women but men too, through narrative exits for social media. "Most of it is cringe but harmless," she said. "Some of it moves into defamation, and a fraction enters your zone. Fabricated evidence to control the legal outcome." She showed me forums, closed Facebook groups, an entire Slack workspace where moderators warned members how to avoid digital authenticity audits. "It's not a deep state," she said. "It's a shallow web of incentives. Attention rewards the best story, not the truest one." Suddenly, all the soft launch separation posts I'd seen in our friend group made a different kind of sense. We weren't just living in a time of cheating. We were living in an era where infidelity had a distribution plan and a content sponsor and a discount code for therapy. We ran our own distribution plan. My lawyer filed motions that might as well have come gift-wrapped. A neutral request for a third-party digital analysis, a motion to compel discovery on certain financial accounts, an innocuous stipulation about non-disparagement in the interim. Sloan kept posting. Her captions got sweeter as her story got sharper. I began to feel like a background character in a show about my life. "Toxic love is a lesson," she wrote, next to a photo of herself holding a latte in an oversized sweater, the ring turned inward like it was camera-shy. "Break free," commented a friend we hadn't seen in person in 2 years. Meanwhile, my kid was asking if I could help build a model of a volcano. We poured vinegar and baking soda, and the foam went everywhere, a mess so joyful I had to step outside and breathe. The night before the hearing, Sloan went live on Instagram. She said she was reclaiming her voice. She said I had been icy and controlling, and that she finally felt safe. Thousands of hearts bubbled up the screen. Someone donated stars. Zane hovered off camera like a narrative coach. I watched from my garage while I looked for a hex key to fix a loose bed frame. I felt two truths at once. I had loved this woman. I no longer recognized her. Naomi texted, "She's overreaching. That helps us. Save the video." We were turning our lives into exhibits, and even as I played along, I hated it. But I had learned that you have to walk through the gaudy thing to get to the quiet one. You had to endure the circus to get to the courthouse library where the clerk hums and stamps and the paper acquires its power. Family court is not television, but that day it cosplayed as one. The judge, Honorable A.R. Lancaster, ran her courtroom like a mix of homeroom and hospital triage. She did not suffer fools or monologues. "Bullet points," she told lawyers who tried to soliloquize. "Offer of proof?" she said to one who sighed too theatrically. Sloan walked in wearing an outfit calibrated to say, "Sincere, humble, reborn." Zane wore a blazer he thought made him invisible, then sat in the last row like an understudy praying the lead breaks a leg. The mockery began before the oath. She looked me up and down and smirked to her lawyer, an expression so tiny you could have missed it if you hadn't trained your eyes on that face for a decade. When her lawyer objected to Naomi's credentials on the basis of novelty, Naomi smiled like a person who collects such objections as souvenirs and walked the court through a short course on digital artifacts that had even the bailiff nodding along. We admitted the postnup. We admitted the trust. We admitted the financials that tracked Sloan's content creator launch funds into accounts with names like Lighthouse Mastermind and Divine Feminine Accelerator, which was mostly an invoice from Zane for coaching. When my lawyer asked Naomi about the British spellings, a laugh rolled through the gallery like wind through a cornfield. "Color with a U is not how Mr. Whitaker writes," she said. "It's how Mr. Zane speaks when he wants to sound like Not Phoenix." The judge listened. You could see it in the way she held her pen, the small tilts of head, the stillness that says a mind is whirring at a speed polite enough not to show. When Sloan finally took the stand, she brought the performance I'd been bracing for. A scrapbook of grievances, a reel of how he made me feel. The problem for her case wasn't that feelings aren't real. It was that her feelings were being asked to carry facts they couldn't lift. Under cross, her stories began to swerve. Dates shifted. Screenshots lost their place. Naomi's report sat on the bench like a fire extinguisher ready to be grabbed. Sloan tried mockery as ballast. "He's pathetic," she said of me. "He's weaponizing science." The judge raised an eyebrow, not unkindly, just as if to say, "We have rules here." And even as Sloane spoke, the bracelet on her wrist started its nervous chime. Do you see it yet? The reverse structure like a film that begins at the bombing and only later shows you the cigarette and the match? The verdict wasn't an accident waiting to happen. It was the end of a trail of breadcrumbs we had baked, dehydrated, and placed carefully where the court could follow them without tripping. The conspiracy wasn't shadowed men in black SUVs. It was 1,000 cheerful micro-industries that make money from chaos and call it healing. And here's the most American twist of all. The thing that saved me wasn't rage or even revenge. It was paperwork. Not just the post-nup and the trust, but the steady accumulation of receipts that together formed a story truer than any monologue. "You don't need a smoking gun," Naomi told me after lunch over sad courthouse sandwiches. "You need a chorus." The judge didn't lecture. She narrated. This is rarer than you think. She laid out the findings like she was teaching 8th grade civics and wanted the kids to actually remember how a fact is constructed. "We begin with the agreement these parties entered into," she said, and the post-nup rose from mere document to a working map. "This is not punitive, it is protective," she said of the house trust. "Children need a bed that does not move because adults are chasing their next audience." I didn't know judges were allowed to be poets. Maybe they aren't. Maybe she just had poetry in her voice. She dismissed the coercive control allegation with specific references to expert analysis that anyone could understand without a PhD. She called the fabricated messages persuasive only to those who prefer drama to data. You could feel the room recalibrate. The mockery drained out of Sloane's posture like the tide leaving a sandcastle. When the judge talked about the dissipation of funds, she did it without sarcasm. "If you are going to invest in a mastermind," she said, and yes, she air-quoted, "it must not be with money you owe to your mortgage and your child's dental work." I had forgotten that judges are also parents and neighbors and Costco members who know exactly how much a pediatric filling costs. She assigned the predictable, not unreasonable stream of support that attends a divorce with a child, but she denied spousal support for the period during which Sloane's brand defamed me. "You do not get to burn his house down and send him the invoice for a new match," she said, a sentence that an appellate court may someday quibble with, but which today felt like the precise sound of common sense. And then, and this is where the story lurches into the unreal in a way that is somehow more true than plain reality, the judge did something I've never seen. She looked at both of us and asked for our phones. The bailiff collected them like a teacher scooping up contraband. She handed them to her clerk, who placed them face down on the bench. "I can't stop you from narrating your lives," the judge said. "I can, however, ask for 12 minutes of silence after this hearing. 12 minutes without posting, texting, strategizing, or turning the next breath into content. You can handle 12 minutes." It was both reprimand and blessing. In those 12 minutes, the fluorescent lights hummed, the gallery dispersed, and I realized I had not taken a breath that wasn't ready to be weaponized in months. Revenge lost its neon. Family regained its lowercase f. Betrayal returned to its proper size. Enormous at midnight, survivable in daylight. Outside, the courthouse steps looked like a movie set. The PTA paparazzi had dwindled to 2 moms pretending to check their parking meters. Zane had slid into the background like a stock photo of a man waiting. Naomi, who had come to court in a jacket the color of good advice, shook my hand and said, "Go home and make dinner. Don't make a statement." My lawyer gave me a look that said, "I did my job, you do yours." The unknown number was no longer unknown. It had a name in my contacts now, next to a small lightning bolt, as if I'd needed a symbol to remember who helped map me out of a maze. I wanted to make a speech. I wanted to deliver a monologue to no one in particular about how cheating and infidelity in the age of content had turned love into a side hustle and men like me into unwilling extras. I wanted to warn every husband and wife in the zip code about the small lies that snowball when they're paid by the view. But the judge had asked for 12 minutes. So I sat in my car, put my forehead on the steering wheel like a cliché, and counted my breaths. On breath 5, I remembered my daughter's volcano. On breath 8, I remembered Sloan before the binder era, when we still believed in the magic of getting two people to agree on a grocery list without killing each other. On breath 11, I thought about my father, who taught me how to stand still when the other person is spinning. On breath 12, my phone was still with the clerk, and I laughed out loud, the laugh of a man whose pockets are suddenly light. When I got the phone back, I did not post. I drove to the grocery store. I bought the rotisserie chicken again and a watermelon that weighed as much as a bowling ball, and the cheapest bouquet of flowers they had left in the refrigerated case. I went home and cooked and cut and set the table. My daughter came in with a project due tomorrow, and I said, "We have time." She asked where Mom was, and I said, "Mom is making decisions that are hers to make." I used English that did not put me on the side of a war. We talked about the state bird. We looked it up and then argued anyway, because arguing about birds is safe. You want epilogue. You want me to declare a thesis about toxic love and cheating and the American appetite for narratives that flatter our wounds. Fine. Here's a thesis. We live in a country that sells us 1,000 plots for how to be happy and forgives us for none of them when they fail. We make family into a content format and then act surprised when the algorithm prefers betrayal. We punish sincerity because it doesn't convert. But the opposite of performance isn't silence. It's testimony. In court, testimony is the one place where we swear, affirm, that our words are attempting to be true. There's room for jokes at the edges. There's even room for parody, as long as everyone knows which part is the bit. The conspiracy, I discovered, is not a smoky room. It's a sunlit feed bus, where cheating wives and husbands and lovers are coached to turn their smallest heartbreak into a revenue stream. I can't stop that. I can resist it. Months later, the house trust is still intact. I mow on Saturdays. I coach first base and pretend I understand the infield fly rule better than I actually do. Sloan has a new apartment not far away, and sometimes when I drop our daughter off, Zane is there carrying a box that looks suspiciously empty. We are none of us the heroes in the way we audition to be. The judge's words still echo at the oddest times, like when I'm looking at air filters in aisle 17. Children need a bed that does not move. So I give my kid a bed that does not move. I give myself a life that does not move unless it has to. I keep the fridge notifications on because I've grown fond of appliances that tell the truth. I still don't put a space before an ellipsis. I still don't use color with a U. And if you are reading this because you clicked on a video titled, "His Cheating Wife Mocked Him in Court," but the judge's verdict left her trembling and you came for revenge, I don't blame you. It is a tempting word, neon and loud. But here's the secret baked into the verdict the camera didn't capture. The opposite of revenge isn't mercy. It's accuracy. If you insist on a neat ending, if you need the American ceremonial close, picture this. The same courthouse steps, different sky. I'm there on a Tuesday with a folder not even half an inch thick. Inside are the school forms for fall, the trust's routine update, a printout of my daughter's schedule, and a grocery list that refuses to become content. I sign where I need to. I drive home. I slice watermelon. I answer a text from Naomi about a case she's taking in Ohio that sounds like a rerun of ours with different costumes. I tell her, good luck. Then I put my phone down, walk into the living room, and sit with my kid while she reads to me out loud about a rabbit who wants a red balloon. She mispronounces a word and we laugh and she tries again. Justice doesn't feel like trumpets. It feels like that, a small voice finding the right syllable. And for all the headlines, that's the only story I'll keep.